بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So in the previous lesson we started our discussion of the topic of unity and how the jama'ah, which is unity, is truth and correctness, and disunity, which is al-furqa, is deviation and punishment. So At-Tahawi said, وَنَرَى الْجَمَاعَةَ حَقًّا وَصَوَابًا وَالْفُرْقَةَ زَيْغًا وَعَذَابًا. And so in the previous lesson we looked at Sheikh Salih Al-Fawzan's commentary upon this statement, and we'll continue today with the commentary of Sheikh Salih Al-Sheikh. And so he begins by saying that At-Tahawi rahimahullah, in this sentence, he says that Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the people of Hadith, the people of Athar, the righteous Salaf, the followers of the righteous Salaf, they hold that Al-Jama'ah, meaning to be upon unity and to be one and to be together, that this is true, the truth, and what is correct. And Allah Azza wa Jal has made it to be true and correct, and the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has made it to be correct and true, in contrast with falsehood. So they contrasted unity, they made it to be true, they considered it to be true and truthfulness and correctness, and they contrasted it with falsehood. So they basically say that anything which opposes the jama'ah, then it is falsehood, it is an error, it is misguidance. And for that reason we see At-Tahawi clearly use this terminology. He said, وَنَرَى الْجَمَاعَةَ حَقًّا وَصَوَابًا وَالْفُرْقَةَ زَيْغًا وَعَذَابًا. Al-Furqa, separation, disunity, is a deviation, and it is also a punishment. And so in other words, disunity then is swerving away from the straight path of Allah. It is to be distant away from what Allah has commanded, and it is also a punishment at the same time, a punishment by which the ummah is inflicted, and the explanation of that will proceed or will come shortly in some other statements that Al-Tahawi mentions in what is to follow. Now, why did Al-Tahawi include this issue in the issue of creed? Two reasons. First of all, that the greatest affair by which deviation occurs in the ummah, bloodshed occurs in the ummah, weakness occurs in the ummah, the appearance of innovations, appearance of shirk, and all types of punishments. So everything that we can think of, basically, of deviation, bloodshed, violence, weakening, innovation, distortion, shirk, disbelief, and all types of worldly punishments, they all arise because of abandoning the jama'ah. Abandoning the jama'ah and taking to separation and thinking separation to be something good. So this is the first thing. And the second thing is that many of the deviant sects which appeared, they considered their separation to be something good, and they actively pursued this separation. And they saw that in unity in the jama'ah, strangely enough, they saw it to be something which is weakness. Right? So they saw diversity in belief, they saw this to be a weakness. They saw it to be weakness, and so therefore they abandoned the jama'ah and sought separation, thinking this to be a strength. So they basically reversed things the other way around, and this is a general trend that you see amongst the sects of misguidance. Now, to oppose them, to oppose all of this, and to oppose their path, meaning their path of separation. This is a defining characteristic of al-firqatun najiyah, meaning the saved group, those about whom the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, kullaha finnar or kulluha finnar illa wahida. All of them are in the fire except for one. And they said, who is this, O Messenger of Allah? And he said, al-jama'ah. He used the word al-jama'ah. So from all of this brief introduction, the following issues, then the following masail, give us some further detailed insight into this issue. So the first issue is that At-Tahawi, look at the word he used. The word he used, he said, nara, wa nara al-jama'ata haqqan wa sawaban. Nara, which means, literally it means, and we see. We see the jama'ah to be truth and correctness. Wal furqata zaygan wa adhaban. And separation to be a deviation and punishment. The word nara here, when it is used here, he actually means we believe. It means al-i'tiqad, nara. And this we see often and common in the writings of the Salaf. When they want to explain their belief, they say nara. We hold, or we believe, which means we believe in Allah's oneness, nara, and we believe in obedience to the rulers in what is good, and not to contend with them and to rise against them in rebellion. So the word nara, when we read it in the books of the people of the Sunnah, in the books of Aqeedah, when it comes in this manner, when they say nara in the plural, nara we see, then, or we believe, it has the meaning of al-i'tiqad. It means they are speaking about their belief. So, in other words, At-Tahawi is saying that it is from our belief, and belief here being taken from the Quran and from the Sunnah, because this is what is commanded in the Quran and the Sunnah. It is from our belief that unity is correct and true and correct, and disunity is deviation and punishment. So that's the first issue. The word nara, we are speaking of creed. Second issue is that the jama'ah, which is mentioned here, it has come mentioned in numerous ways, sometimes with the explicit word al-jama'ah, but sometimes it doesn't come explicitly with the word jama'ah, but the meaning is basically the same. So the hadith we just mentioned about the 73 sects and only one is saved, and the Messenger of Allah, he said al-jama'ah. This is very, very clear and explicit. Likewise, we see the hadith, man ataakum wa amrukum jami' yuridu an yashqa asakum faqtuluhu ka'inan man kan. Whoever comes to you whilst your affair is united, wanting to split your ranks, then kill him, whoever he may be. So again, the meaning here is the same. The meaning is the same, al-jama'ah and unity. And likewise we see in the Quran, just as it has come in the hadith, we see likewise in the Quran it has come bil-ma'na. So for example, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. So the word jami'an, the word jama'ah was not used, but the word jami' coming from the same root, it means that hold all of you together in unison, meaning in unity, and be not divided. So the ma'na is the same. And likewise, the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu dukhulu fi silmi kaffa. O you who believe, enter into as-silm, meaning to submission, kaffa, meaning all of you together. So again, all of you together without any separation. So again, the meaning here is the same as al-jama'ah. With the meaning, enter into Islam wholeheartedly, collectively together in unison without any separation or splitting. And also, what is very clear as well is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, شَرَعَ لَكُم مِّنَ الدِّينِ مَا وَصَّى بِهِ نُوحًا وَالَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ وَمَا وَصَّيْنَا بِهِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى أَنْ أَقِيمُوا الدِّينَ وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا فِيهِ. He has legislated for you of the religion what he gave to Nuh, and what we inspired to you, O Muhammad, and what we gave to Ibrahim and Musa and Isa, that you should establish the religion and be not divided therein, split not therein. So, meaning that do not distinguish between some parts of Islam and other parts of Islam. Enter into Islam wholeheartedly, completely, and adhere to everything, and don't take hold of something and reject something else, or act by something and not act by something else. So entering into Islam wholeheartedly in this manner, it has the meaning of it. The meaning here again is one of unity and togetherness. So as for the word jama'ah itself, we've got the general idea now, jama'ah and unity and oneness. Now this word jama'ah comes with two sub-meanings, or it is of two types in fact. And so the first of them is the jama'ah fid deen, meaning in the affairs of religion, in matters of belief. And the second is al-jama'ah fil abadan, meaning in physical bodies and in relation to the worldly affairs. So whenever we hear this word al-jama'ah, then all of the various texts that we've seen, so the text that you've heard, some of them use the word al-jama'ah explicitly, like the hadith of splitting. Others use the word jama'ah in meaning, or they have the meaning of jama'ah without using the word jama'ah. And some of them are speaking in relation to obedience and to the rulers and unity in a worldly sense, in let's say a political sense. And others are speaking in the sense that that there should be oneness and unity in the actual affairs of religion, not splitting into sects in religious issues. So in essence, we can summarize it as al-jama'ah fi deen, jama'ah in terms of the deen, in terms of issues, and jama'ah fi dunya, or fil abdan, unity in terms of the actual worldly affairs. And so for that reason, we see that from the meaning of al-jama'ah is to be united behind an imam, behind a wali al-amr, the one who is in charge of the affairs of the Muslims. And so therefore, in short then, we have two explanations for the word jama'ah. The first one, jama'atun fi din, meaning unity and oneness in the religious affairs. This is the greatest foundation for the jama'ah. It is the greatest foundation of that which Allah Azza wa Jal He revealed. He sent His books, He sent messengers, and in order for the people to be one, just as they were at the beginning. At the beginning, as we know in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal He mentions how the whole of mankind were a single ummah. They were one, they were upon Tawheed. They were worshipping Allah, there was no shirk. And then, as we know, in the time of Nuh alayhi salam, they split and they differed. And so Allah sent messengers and He revealed books in order that they may come together again, which is to come together upon Tawheed, which is the asas, the foundation, and to worship Him alone, and to leave everything which is besides Him, and to free oneself, to have al-bara'ah from shirk and its people, and to obey Allah, to obey the Messenger. All of this is something that brings about unity in the deen. And so this is what is meant in those various ayat that we have just listened to. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. This is speaking in matters of Tawheed and Aqeedah. And likewise, شَرَعَ لَكُم مِّنَ الدِّينِ مَا وَصَّى بِهِ نُوحًا وَالَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ وَمَا وَصَّيْنَا بِهِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى أَنْ أَقِيمُوا الدِّينَ وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا فِيهِ. The same ma'na, that in the affairs of the religion, that you be united, that you establish the religion and be not disunited. So all of this is to unite the people by adhering to Islam wholeheartedly in everything, and not abandoning some of it whilst holding on to other parts of it, and that Muslims should enter into Islam wholeheartedly. This is the first jama'ah, and it's the asal, it's the foundation. And the second jama'ah is the Jama'atul Abdan, which is that of the bodies, which is when the Muslims, they adhere to obedience to the one who is in authority over them, to hear and obey in anything which does not entail disobedience to Allah. And this particular type of jama'ah, this particular type of unity is actually a wasila. It is a means by which the first one is attained and maintained. In other words, that by obeying the rulers and being united and obeying them in whatever does not entail disobedience to Allah, whether one likes it or does not like it, then all of this is a means of actualizing the first jama'ah, which is the jama'ah in the affairs of Tawheed and Aqeedah. And that is why you see that the great scholars of Ahlul Sunnah, like Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, they mention these two principles together. Like we see in the 6 principles, al-usul al-sitta of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah, the first 2 principles he mentions, the first one is to single out Allah and to worship Him alone. And the second principle he mentions is hearing and obeying the one whom Allah has put in authority. Because they're both connected to each other. And one is a means of achieving the other. In fact, both of them work together. One leads to the other and the other leads to the other. And we see in the hadith, على المرء المسلم على المرء السمع والطاعة فيما أحب وكره. Upon a Muslim is to hear and obey in what he likes or loves or dislikes and is displeased with. As long as it is something which is not a disobedience to Allah, then he should obey the one who is in charge. Now, any deviation from this, when we neglect this principle or when we leave some of it, Allah Azza wa Jal, He punishes the people by way of al-furqa, by way of separation and splitting. Whether we are, and so likewise in neglecting one or the other, whether it is the jama'ah of the deen or the jama'ah of the dunya, whenever you neglect one or the other, then it leads to separation and splitting, and each of the two affect each other. They are both tied. And both of these types of jama'ah are desired and commanded. We see that when the people split in the deen in terms of religious affairs, then they will also abandon the jama'ah, meaning they will abandon the political unity will be lost. And when people leave the jama'ah of the dunya, meaning the political unity behind the ruler, then that will also lead to deviations in creed. Right? So these two things are basically binding and tied together. So that's the second issue to do with the meaning of jama'ah. The first was to do with the word nara. We are dealing with an issue of belief. The word nara means i'tiqad. And the second issue is the meaning of jama'ah. Jama'ah is of 2 types. The jama'ah of the deen and the jama'ah of the dunya. And jama'ah itself comes in the text, sometimes explicitly and sometimes in meaning. And sometimes those texts are referring to issues of belief, and sometimes those texts are referring to the issue of obedience to a ruler, the political unity. The third issue that we come to is that in the religion historically there appeared a splitting, the Jama'atul Deen, there appeared splitting, and this occurred before there was splitting in terms of the bodies, splitting the political disunity. And this is when the Khawarij, when they first appeared, we see that they had affairs. The Khawarij, when they appeared in the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, and whatever took place until they eventually assassinated Uthman, and then splitting occurred in terms of physically, where there was no longer unity, and there was splitting, they split into various groups, and the unity was lost. And this arose because the Khawarij held certain ideas, held certain beliefs, and they opposed the guidance of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in those issues. So the point being here is that any person who comes and he calls to a unity in Aqeedah, a unity upon Tawheed, actualizing Tawheed, sticking to the Aqeedah, abandoning shirk, abandoning innovations, and adhering to the halal, keeping away from the haram. All of this, a person who does this, he's actually engaged in calling to physical unity, because we've already established that the two are binding to each other. So the one who calls to Tawheed, correction of Aqeedah, shunning all innovations and affairs of shirk and bid'ah and so on and so forth, this one is truly calling to the unity of the bodies. And similarly, the one who calls to the unity of behind the Imam, he is calling to the unity of deen, the unity of Aqeedah, the unity of creed, because both of them are binding and tied to each other, as we mentioned. So from that we lead to the next point, which is that from everything that we have now discussed, we can then start looking and evaluating the people and their calls, their da'awat from the various groups and sects. And we can basically say that in respect to this issue, or the understanding of this issue of jama'ah and unity, the people are divided into three groups. The first group are those who want to establish religious things at the expense of the unity of the bodies. So in other words, what they look at is, they look at affairs of religion, and they are so intent in establishing these affairs, and they do not care for political disunity. And so this category, we are referring to people like the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila. And so what they do is, they see, for example, some oppression or tyranny of the ruler, and they believe that because this is a violation against religion, they therefore try to establish the religion, what is correct in the religion. And by doing that, they pay no attention to the consequences of that, which is splitting, killing, tumult, confusion, and so on and so forth. So what they do is, they exaggerate in the issue of the religion, even though in the religion itself they are prohibited to do that to begin with, because they are ordered to have patience and obedience. So this is the first type. They do not care for the splitting which occurs, and they are willing to have this expense at the expense, or they're willing to try to establish the religion as they see it incorrectly at the expense of splitting and disunity. The second group are those who are the other way around. They basically see that the greatest affair is to maintain the physical unity, the unity of the bodies. And this then leads them to abandon enjoining good and prohibiting evil, and from giving the obligatory advice to people, and to warn and show rejection against the affairs of shirk and bid'ah, and from things of that nature. And so the example of this would be people like, or groups like, Al-Ikhwan Al-Muslimun, the Muslim Brotherhood. And the majority of these groups and parties which appeared in the 20th century, who tried to bring worldly unity or political unity, and they abandoned the unity in the religion. So they wanted political unity at the expense of unity in the religion. And as for the third group, they are the ones who are deeply rooted and deeply grounded in knowledge, and they are the people of Sunnah and Jama'ah, and they are the ones who combine between both affairs. They call at one and the same time to unity in the religion, and likewise they call at one and the same time to unity in terms of the physical, political unity, the unity of the bodies. And so therefore they enjoin the good, they prohibit the evil, they call to Tawheed, they warn against shirk, they call for adherence to the Sharia, to the commands and avoidance of the prohibitions. And at the same time they enjoin physical unity, they call for unity behind the ruler, and not to rebel, not to revolt, not to march, not to demonstrate, not to create tumult and confusion and turmoil in the society. And they don't make any compromises, and they adhere to the Sharia means in everything. This is the way of the people of the Sunnah and the Jama'ah, because the Jama'ah comprises of both things as we have established. And so there is no doubt, of course, at the same time, that the Muslim nation often goes through various situations. At times there is safety and security. At other times there is fear. At other times there is fitna which engulfs the nation. At other times there is, the Muslims are strong and established. At other times they are weak. So in each of these situations, the scholars of the Muslims, meaning Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, upon a correct understanding of what the word Jama'ah means, they will command the good and prohibit the evil in accordance with what will bring out the best, the greatest maslahah, right? That which is best. And this is because at times there may be a situation where enjoining the good will lead to a greater evil, or prohibiting the evil will lead to an even greater evil. And all of this varies according to the time and the circumstance and the situation that the Muslim nation is in. Is it living in security and peace? Is it living in fear? Is it in a time where it's firmly established and strong? Is it in a time where it's engulfed in fitna? And so you see that the people of knowledge, the scholars, they give rulings, they advise, they command, they prohibit in accordance with wisdom, in accordance with looking at the situation and the circumstances of the Muslims. And we see that in all of this they are opposed either by the extremists like the Khawarij and the Mu'tazila and people like them, the extremists, the terrorists, who raise the banner of jihad and all these other things out of their extremism and exaggeration. And when you look at the situation of the Muslim nation, you see that these are just ridiculous calls, totally out of place, unwarranted. And these people lack wisdom. They are not living, in reality. And on the other hand, you see people like on the other side, the Ikhwan, the Mumayyi'ah, the Murji'ah, those who are the ones who neglect the religion and cause wastage to the religion. You see that they abandon enjoining good and prohibiting evil altogether. Whereas the scholars, they behave in accordance with the circumstances, and they enjoin good, prohibit evil in accordance with wisdoms, and they do not compromise, but they observe the masalih, they observe the beneficial interests, and they behave and advise accordingly. And they are unlike the Khawarij on the one hand, and the neglectors on the other hand, on the other side. So for that reason, when we look at these issues, obviously about unity and disunity, these issues are taken from the people of knowledge, the people who are deeply rooted in knowledge, the ones who combine between these affairs, unity in the deen and unity in the dunya. And so this is a great and mighty principle, and you can see that as a result of violation of this principle, throughout history, tremendous amounts of evils have occurred, starting from the Khawarij, who appeared in the time of Uthman radiyallahu anhu, and in the time of the Sahaba, and then continuing throughout the ages up until we are in our present time, where we see both, the Khawarij on the one hand and the Murji'ah on the other hand, the ones who act and behave in accordance with the principles of the Murji'ah, like the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, and groups like them. All these evils have come as a result of opposing the Jama'ah of the deen and the Jama'ah of the dunya. So At-Tahawi said, وَنَرَى الْجَمَاعَةَ حَقًّا وَصَوَابًا. He described it as haqq and sawab. It is haqq because Allah Azza wa Jal has ordered it and commanded it and described it to be truth. And it is sawab, it is correct, because anyone who opposes a path other than this, then he is upon other than the straight path. And we see this clearly from the evidences in the Quran and in the Sunnah. And the one who opposes this jama'ah, then he is threatened with misguidance and with perishing and being destroyed, as we see in some of the hadith. The hadith of Al-Irbad bin Sariyah, قد تركتكم على البيداء ليلها كنارها لا يزيغ عنها بعد إلا هالك. That I have left you upon clarity, its night is as distinct from its day, no one deviates from it except that he is destroyed. So this is an explanation of this statement, the first half of this statement. And what we'll do is we'll conclude our lesson there, because the second half, وَالْفُرْقَةُ زَيْغًا وَعَذَابًا, will probably take another lesson to complete. So we'll leave that for the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala, and we'll conclude our discussion at this point. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.